Okay, on to our final species. We've got pin cherry. Okay, we're gonna start with the rooting hormone. So pin cherry with rooting hormone number 1, right here. So there's a tiny little bit of foliar flush happening. Very gentle here. I don't want to wipe off that rooting hormone because it's still coated all the way around, okay? So we're not going to be able to say whether there's any callus, and we don't see any roots developing. So we're going to give this a coat of F for a very, very tiny little bit of foliar flush. But that's it for pin cherry number 1, okay? Pin cherry number 2, definitely a lot more going on above the substrate. Let's see how that corresponds to any growth below. Okay, so again, we've got a good coating of the root hormone still on there. You can see a little bit of that gray, and I don't want to disturb it. So we might be missing out on some excitement here, but we're just going to see what happens over the next week. But we definitely can call this an F because of the foliar flush happening above out of the foliar buds. Okay, so pin cherry number 2, F. Pin cherry number 3, again, not a whole lot going on for the foliage, but it started. Let's see here. Same thing, so we can't really see. I don't want to disturb it. We're going to just let it sit for another few days, and we're going to call this an F. Okay, so pin cherry with hormone 1, 2, and 3, all code F. Get that back. And finally, pin cherry without rooting hormone. I'm just going to get this out of the way. So number 1, there we go. These ones we can be a little more destructive with, okay? So this is a really tough call. I don't see a very distinct difference in the wood there, so I don't think we can call it callus. Even though I suspect that it's there, science is not about feelings. So we can't just feel that it's there. We have to be able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, and we can't do that here, so we can't claim it. That's how science works. We can prove that there is foliar flush, so we would give this a code of F, and that's it. Okay, so pin cherry number 1 without another F. All these Fs we're so excited about. Pin cherry number 2 without hormone. Okay. Let's take a closer look at this. Here, this is a great learning experience. So here, I think we do have conclusive evidence. Let's wipe this off. Right here, you can see the callus forming along the outside of that wound, and it's darker in the middle of that slice, and that is our original wood. So that allows us to say without a shadow of a doubt that this is callus. So the code for pin cherry without hormone number 2 is FR or FC, sorry. Oh yeah, the code that doesn't exist. So FC or CF, whichever one you want to do there. Total creative freedom for what you want to call it. All right, last but not least, we've got pin cherry number 3 without hormone. So we've got lots of flushing happening on this one, and it'll be interesting to see if that corresponds with more going on below ground, or if it's going to look pretty consistent. Okay. What's really cool here is we can see the line where it was buried. You may not be able to see it, but this foliage is developing under the soil level, which is really interesting because that's a very stubborn, determined little leaf, because really and truly it should become a root with where it's going, but we can see the bending moment where it's heading straight up, trying to get into the light. So very, very cool feature from our final check for the week. Looking at, you know, the things we're supposed to look at. Let's find our wound. It's easy to get distracted. Okay. This is a tricky one because I don't want to do any damage, but there's soil embedded right in there. We can call this C for callus, okay? We can see this nice clean, clean wound wood right where the spoon is up against, okay? Even though we can't see the face of the injury because it's packed with soil and substrate, we can call this callus and we can prove it because we've got a little bit of a bulge and we've got that kind of fresh white growth. So I hope that makes sense. I am going to try and plant this a little more shallow to leave this foliar flush out of the soil line. So again, we have FC for our pin cherry number 3 without rooting hormone. Okay, so that's what we've got as far as data you need to collect. We've got flush happening on all of our test species as well on the other side, with the exception of the amber maple that I forgot was there and just noticed. So it doesn't look like there's anything going on there, but we're gonna leave those a little longer just to let them kind of do their thing and remain undisturbed. And I don't want to cause any confusion with what data you need to collect and what you don't. So we'll show you that in a couple of weeks once we have kind of a final experiment done on them. But that gives you all of the data that you need for week 10. In weeks 11 and 12, you're going to get some sort of image of the various cuttings, and you'll have to apply the code to them. And remember, use that FC code or CF, the one that's not listed on there. If it applies, then use that. If you're not sure, then email me and we can talk about the individual cutting that you're looking at and we can come to a decision on a code together.